Hi, class. I went to go find my Descartes lectures, and apparently I no longer have them. But because it was expressed that this resource would be helpful, I just thought I would throw a new one together. Having said that, because I wanted to get it to you ASAP, it is not scripted, so you will have to bear with me a little bit, I hope. But very big picture, just let's talk about what we said today as a start. One, there's this concept in philosophy sometimes called first philosophy. And as a meta concept, it just means what you have to study first in philosophy. So different philosophers have said different answers at different times. Aristotle, interestingly enough, said ontology was first philosophy. First, you have to figure out what there is. Some have said logic is first philosophy. I kind of lean that way myself personally. But Descartes says epistemology. Well, first you have to know what you know. So it's a very sensible answer. But again, during this time period, the specter of skepticism raised itself in a couple of different ways. And part of this, and I think probably most relevant to Descartes' project, is people like Bacon's project. Sorry, I'm hugging my laptop. People like Bacon's project call into doubt, in some ways, the value of tradition. And so we don't have that anymore. We can't say, well, Aristotle said it, so that's the end, or they've done things this way, so that's the end, because now we realize there is valuable tradition and not valuable tradition. So just saying tradition doesn't mean anything anymore. And so, again, Descartes does this. What I want to be able to do is just hold up every one of my beliefs and say thumbs up, thumbs down. That's it. And so he's not really just trying to figure out his beliefs, but he's trying to figure out a method for how people might go about that. And so that is the Meditations on First Philosophy. He's not, it's a fun style, but it's not like he's sitting there thinking of these things for the first time. He's stated them very formally in the other discourses, etc., etc. But again, here's what he's doing. Well, he's really interested in the question, how can I know? And he wants to do that in a way that is free from doubt. He wants to do things in terms of certainty. In contemporary epistemology, he's working on something called foundationalism. Build your knowledge on things you absolutely know. Build the rest on top of that. And so his method of establishing this, and as I mentioned in class, defeating the skeptic, is the method called hyperbolic doubt. By the way, Descartes' stuff is so famous, everything has a fancy name. So the method of hyperbolic doubt. What that means, he's just going to, even though he doesn't believe it, Descartes is not a skeptic, never was a skeptic, never will be a skeptic. Descartes is not a skeptic, but he will play the skeptic's game, and he will play it very well. And so the methodology he's going to adopt by his method of hyperbolic doubt is just to assume if it's in any way less than certain, if I could even conceive of it being false, I'll treat it as false. I'll just pretend I don't know it at all. So in that regard, what he's going to do in Meditation 1 is he's going to give these three increasingly powerful skeptical arguments. And he's not just giving them to give them, it's important later. But the first one's the weakest. And again, these are all famous. They all have their own fancy names. And so the first one is called the argument from illusion. And how does that one run? And what does it call into doubt? Well, roughly speaking, it just points out that sometimes the senses are deceptive. So you might see a large, bald figure off in the distance and say, hey, Mickey. And as you get a little closer, as it turns out, Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know. Or the oar that's stuck in the water looks bent. Or one of my favorites, we would do this as an example in class sometimes. Orange juice tastes sweet. Then you jam a whole brownie in your mouth, drink some more orange juice, and now it tastes sour. And so, another really weird one I do in class sometimes, I have a pair of purple tinted sunglasses. And if you wear them for a while, when you take them off, right after you take them off, everything that was white now looks yellow. So these are just examples of when the senses seem to deceive us. And what do they all have in common? Notice I keep saying sometimes the senses deceive us. What seems to be in common is these are all weird cases where the senses aren't working as they normally should because of the purple tint, because you have a mouthful of brownie, because you're super, super, super far away, etc., etc. But it doesn't call into doubt, well, my hand is in front of me. And so it doesn't call into doubt the senses when they're working as they're supposed to. And so very, very weak argument, sorry, not weak, but non-powerful argument. So it seems. Actually, his solution to that is really going to set a lot of trend for modern thinking, and is why it's included. Let's go to the more powerful one, the dream argument. And before we even get into it, the dream argument was the most powerful skeptical argument to date. And what he pointed out is, well, sometimes I'm dreaming and I think I'm awake. I've actually dreamed of giving the Descartes lecture before, so I could really emphasize this. Yeah, sometimes I dream and I think I'm awake. But what does that mean? If certainty is our requirement, I can't be certain that I'm not dreaming right now. And once you do that, if you really push the envelope, this could call into doubt a whole lot of things. So, as a for instance, maybe I just dreamed up my male pattern baldness. Maybe I have long flowing locks when I wake up, which means can I be certain I'm bald? Nope. Or to take a little more dark turn, well, maybe I'm dreaming from a hospital bed after I was in a really bad car accident. So now can I be sure I have my left hand? No, not anymore. I am no longer certain of that because I might just be dreaming that I still have my hand. And so, etc., etc., etc. The dream argument, when you push the envelope far enough, allows you to call into doubt all knowledge of what are called particulars, of specific things. By contrast, what it leaves into doubt are universals or concepts. I don't know whether I have a left hand, but I do know I didn't invent the concept of left hand. We don't invent concepts when we're dreaming. We just put together what's already there, perhaps in new ways. And so the dream argument allows Descartes to call into doubt all particulars. And again, that's huge. And Descartes says, well, I'm just warming up. Because the third one is sometimes called the evil deceiver argument or the demon argument. And he says, well, what if there's a being who's like God, the relevant like there being omnipotent? And that being is so powerful that it can actually manipulate my concepts of making me have a false concept of left hand. And that would be rather sinister. Pardon the pun. Anyway, this is, if that's true, and we just end meditation 1 there, he hasn't identified anything that escapes that argument, that it doesn't call into doubt. And that's the job of meditation 2. And so meditation 2, he does something, he's going to look for what he calls his Archimedean point. Now, who is Archimedes? Not super important, but he was a Greek physicist, but he worked out the laws of levers. And what Archimedes said was, if you give me a lever long enough and a fixed point in space, I could lift the earth, which is trivially mathematically true, by the way, but you need that fixed point in space. And that's what Descartes needs, some fixed point of knowledge to start leveraging the rest of his knowledge back into the system. And this, as we mentioned in class today, is the argument. It's usually summarized as I think, therefore I am. Of course, Descartes never actually says that in the meditation, but the spirit is there. The argument is there. And so that's the argument called Descartes' cogito. For the Latin, cogito ergo sum would be I think, therefore I am. And so if you're Googling around, it's called the cogito. Anyway, But that's not all he does in meditation too, because he starts to say, yeah, but what is this I? Oh, so sorry. So first of all, the cogito, Descartes says, escapes the deceiver argument. It doesn't defeat the deceiver argument. It is not called into doubt by the deceiver argument. So Descartes says, every time I think of this argument, I think, therefore I am, I know I exist, because if the deceiver is deceiving me, it follows that there's a me. So that is the cogito argument. For Descartes, it gets around the deceiver argument. It escapes it. It is not called into doubt by it. But here's the other thing very relevant for this class, right? It's not the biggest thing in the meditations, but it hits pretty hard. It establishes what's sometimes called mind-body dualism or Cartesian dualism, because he says, what is this I? What is the nature of the thing in the I think, therefore I am? We already established it can't be a body. It can't be a body. I don't even know if I have a body. I could have dreamed up a body, or a deceiver could be deceiving me about my body. I don't even know if I have a left hand. My body's not dream argument proof. And so the cogito, the thing that I can be certain exists, is a thinking thing, a thing that thinks, a mind. But if I can imagine a mind without a body, they cannot be the same. And so Descartes is distancing himself from the Aristotelians and from later scholastics like Aquinas, who have a view called hylomorphism, where a thing is a combination of form and matter. Descartes says, no. I am the thinking thing. I'm the mind. And notice how... So this does two things. And now I'm not really summarizing in the meditation for a moment. Thing one, it gives certain notions of the sacred a very, very useful conceptual tool. Because if Descartes' arguments succeed, he has shown that mind is distinct from body, and it's just as easy to call mind soul, as Descartes himself points out, and say it's a substance. It's something different from the substance that is body. So Descartes is often called a substance dualist. He says there are minds and there are bodies. What makes him a Cartesian dualist is that the two interact with each other. And so mental can cause physical, and physical can cause mental. And so this is what's called Cartesian dualism. Again, it goes really well towards, for instance, certain conceptions of an afterlife. If a body dies and a soul ascends, Descartes has just given a very well-supported grounding for certain religious conceptions. And I will tell you a little bit more about those arguments in a minute with the wax example. But it also carries a whole bunch of problems. So these are very much typified by Gilbert Ryle, who was a later philosopher of mind. He very famously called Descartes' position the common view, because lots of people believe it. But then he called it, with intentional disparagement, the ghost in the machine, because that's what you just described. And there's a lot of weirdnesses and problems with it that later philosophers might have talked about. So it's a double-edged sword there. So while we're thinking about whether Descartes is good or bad for the sacred, this is one of the big components, and that's why I wanted to draw it out. That his view is that mind and body end up being separate. Good for certain conceptions of religion, bad for conceptions of philosophy of mind later. But how does he get to it? A big part of it is, in meditation too, the wax example. The wax example is interesting because... how much do I want to nerd out on this? It gets at Descartes' notion of a substance. So a substance is just that which subsists. For Aristotle, there was substances, and then there were the other 9 categories. Descartes just switches it to substance and property. So We don't need 9 things. We just need 1. But he does this with the wax example. He says, well, I take a piece of wax and it looks a certain way, smells a certain way. If I lick it, it tastes a certain way. If I wrap it on the table, it sounds a certain way. And I think I might have forgot one, but you could go through the 5 senses with it. Then what? He holds it to the flame. And all of the sudden, it looks different. It smells different. It tastes different. It sounds different. And it feels different. And yet, it's the same wax. So what's going on there? Descartes' theory of substance. It's sometimes called the pincushion theory of substance. Think of a substance as a pincushion, and the properties, how it looks, how it smells, how it tastes, whatever the other ones missing are, as the properties, as the pins. And so when you hold it to the flame, you take those pins out and you put in different ones, but the pincushion stays the same. Substance is that which subsists. It's the thing that survives change. Now, why is this important for Descartes? Couple reasons. One, and he makes this a little more clear in the meditations we're skipping, by the way. One, he reveals his theory of substance. The substance is the bearer of properties, and it's the same. But 2, we never see the substance. We only see the properties. And then this will be brought up again in Locke, where he calls the substance the something I know not what. So it's a really interesting phenomenon in the modern period that'll have some ramifications. But 2, we can talk about essential properties. Those are the ones that can't be taken away. For the wax is material substance. As we already said, it's body, not a body, it's body. And so what can't be taken away from body? The one-word answer for Descartes is extension. The fact that it has dimensions, length, width, height. You could change the dimensions, but the fact that it has dimensions won't change. And so the essential, the essence, what makes it, the essential nature of a physical substance is that it is extended. But not the case with mind. Go back to I, the thinking thing. For mind, the essence is thought. I think, therefore I am. That's what can't be taken away. And so we have to have two different kinds of substance, says Descartes, because they have different essences. They have different essential features. And so that's what makes him a dualist. It also creates some other interesting consequences. For instance, if you're not thinking, you're not a thinking thing, which kind of made Descartes public enemy number 1 for PETA later, because he was committed to saying animals only look like they're in pain. They're not really in pain. But that's a side note. So the funny thing about Descartes is you give him an inch, you'll take a mile, because you'll get that list of all the things the I is. A thing that thinks, affirms, doubts, denies. I forget the rest of the list. I don't have the text in front of me. But that is a non-arbitrary list, and sometimes even scholars miss this. Because what Descartes really knows after meditation 2 is this one sentence. The cogito escapes the deceiver argument. He fully understands that. And if you grant that to Descartes, that he understands that one sentence, that means he has to know what doubting is. He has to know what affirming and denying are, and judging and all of this stuff. He has to, that's just part of uttering that sentence. So that's what he has at the end of meditation 2. That is not much, but he has his Archimedean point. Meditation 3, the optional one of the optionals, is going to try to start leveraging back into the world. So he's going to use what's sometimes called, he's going to do something in some ways scientific here. He's going to ask, what is it about the cogito that allows it to escape the deceiver argument? If he can answer that, that's his standard for knowledge. That's what he can know. And I'm going to go through this a little quickly because, again, it's from the optional reading. But his answer to that is called the truth rule. And what is special about the cogito for Descartes is that he clearly and distinctly perceives it. Those are technical terms, clear and distinct. An idea is clear if to perceive it is to perceive it as true. Like you cannot even imagine what it would mean to be false. So an example of a clear idea might be the law of identity. X equals X. Something is the same as itself. I don't even know. If I utter that, I know it's true. I don't even know what it would mean for it to be false. And so that's clear. Distinct means not containing any unclear components. Hey, sorry, that's my big dumb dog snoring. So, for instance, if you say, I am a thinking thing, well, that might actually be unclear if you don't make clear that you're only talking about mind and not the body, because body is not clear. And so that wouldn't be a distinct idea. Anyway, those are not weasel words. For Descartes, they're precise definitions, and he gives them variously. And so what is it about the cogito? It is clear and distinct, which means he knows anything that is clear and distinct. So he basically has gotten his logical truths, his conceptual truths back. He has leveraged those. He's levered those back into the world. And what he's going to do, and here's the powerful move, if you're Descartes, not so powerful if you're Strauss. What he's going to do is try to argue for there being no deceiver, because that's really the big threat in meditation. Would you stop? Sorry. I'm going to throw something at my dog so he quits snoring loudly. He needs to get rid of the deceiver. The deceiver is taking up a whole lot of the mental real estate and keeping us from true knowledge. How am I going to do? So what am I going to do? I'm going to try to use only clear and distinct ideas to show there's no deceiver. He's going to do that indirectly, relevant for this class, by trying to show that there is a non-deceiving God. Because trivially, if there's a non-deceiving omnipotent God, there can't be an omnipotent deceiver. It's trivial because logically and conceptually there can't be two omnipotent beings for reasons we don't need to get into. But that's the general idea. So in Meditation 3, I'm not going to go through those arguments. There's two of them. One's traditionally called the cosmological argument. One's traditionally called the trademark argument. For some obscure reason that is beyond me, scholars sometimes argue if he gives one argument or two. Descartes says he gives two. They have different premises leading to different conclusions. I have no idea what that scholarly debate is about. I think somebody just wanted tenure for saying something shocking. But anyway, so here's what he does. In Meditation 3, he tries to use only clear and distinct ideas to show that there is a non-deceiving God. And he does that in basically two steps. First gets to there's an omnipotent being, and then argues that an omnipotent being can't be a deceiver. So that's what's going on in Meditation 3. I will talk about those all day, every day. If you really want to know how they go, if you're interested, they are not usually considered successful in and of themselves, but they have some really interesting stuff in them that later philosophers of religion have built quite a lot on. But he does some shifty things with some of the medieval concepts and equates a few things. Anyway, it's a very difficult piece. I usually spend like 3 days in the intro class on Meditation 3. So, but that's what goes on. He, to his own knowledge, he tries to show there's no deceiver by showing, using only clear and distinct ideas, that there is a non-deceiving God. Okay, fast forward to Meditation 6. Some of this stuff he's really recapping from Meditation 4. But what's really interesting is, well, now he's in a position because, we got rid of if he's successful in Meditation 3, he got rid of the deceiver argument. That doesn't do anything about the argument from illusion. That doesn't do anything from the dream argument. And his interpretations with these end up being really important. So he's going to say, well, wait a minute. I know that I was created by a non-deceiving God, and that being gave me my senses, which means my senses can't be deceptive. And this is why I was so careful with my language, and Descartes was careful with his language, in Meditation 1. We never said the stick is bent. We said the stick looks bent. Notice that's true. That's not false. It is true that the stick looks bent. We didn't say when I took off the purple glasses, we didn't say the wall is yellow. We said it looks yellow. And so his solution is the senses are not deceptive. All of these cases are from our judgment, that what we judge about our senses. And that's the problem. Now, of course, that isn't enough by itself, because you say, well, wait a minute. God gave me my faculty of judgment as well. And so Descartes says, well, that's not because your faculty of judgment is deceptive. It's because you're finite. And as a finite being, you must sometimes judge when you don't have all the facts. Our need to judge sometimes outweighs our ability to judge. Could you have taken extra steps to confirm whether that was Mickey or Stone Cold Steve Austin before you judged? Sure. But you just thought, but you said, well, wait a minute. I need his judgment now because I have to decide whether to waive or not. And so that's what's going on, is we're just finite. And because of that, sometimes we must judge when we don't fully know. And that's where error comes from. The dream argument is interesting because he points out some things about dreams, is that if I know there's a good God, I could actually assume things like continuity. And so if I go from the last thing I remember is laying down in bed and turning the lights off, and all of a sudden I'm teaching the meditations in my underwear, because I know that the world is not like that, that part of being non-deceiving is allowing for knowledge and allowing, which therefore entails laws of nature that are predictable and continuous, I know I can actually figure out that I'm not dreaming in that case. So that's very roughly speaking how he closes the book on those other two skeptical arguments. So the really interesting stuff for this class, notice, is he thinks that to have certain knowledge, we have to have a good God. That's interesting. And it's interesting because figures we'll look at later will just take the opposite side. Well, and there is no good God, therefore we can't have certainty. But then the other thing that's really interesting and has interplays with the sacred, again, is this very sophisticated series of arguments that leads to a mind that is distinct from the body and is therefore very easily equated with or identified as soul. Descartes just says that's just an issue of language. There's no difference between those two. And so that has some important ramifications as well. So that is a goodly number of meditations in a half hour. Reminder, though, this is not a philosophy class. And so what we're really interested in, again, is kind of the sociological and religious ramifications for this type of thinking and what it does. And so if you still feel like you don't have enough based on that, we can take this at a much, 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 much slower speed in office hours. So otherwise, we will see you on Wednesday. If you want to see what my big stupid dog looks like. Otherwise, we will see you then.